Assignment 2 for Organizational Leadership by Demardrick Banks. The most unique things about me. The most unique things about me would either have to be that I can't swim, that I have broken both of my arms at the same time, or that I have drunken half a bottle of Patron before. I think I'm just your everyday basic college student. There's not really anything interesting about me. I've always been tall enough just to stand up in the water. Plus, whenever I was younger, I would always be on traveling teams for basketball or either AAU teams or just busy with some type of sport, so I would never really have time to swim. Plus, most of the time, whenever I would be at hotels and stuff like that, I'd either just get in the hot tub or I would just be too busy. I never really had the chance to swim. I never really wanted to swim. And then when I was younger, me and my little brother both jumped off our house together to try to jump on the trampoline. And I don't know how I landed some weird way and broke both my arms at the same time. So now both my arms, they extend, but they can't fully extend. And then one night in college, me and one of my roommates, we were pre-gaming for this concert. So we bought a bottle of Patron and we were just taking shots and taking shots and taking shots. And then before we know it, once we request our Uber, the bottle was completely gone and just us two were drinking it. And then, for those of you guys that don't know, pre-gaming is where you drink before you go out somewhere and drink even more. It's like a term that I learned in college. What I'm working towards. I'm currently working towards getting my undergrad in business management from Highlands, which I'm set to finish in the fall of this year. I plan on attending grad school shortly afterwards and getting my master's in oil and gas management. I want to manage a company following graduation, and then I want to someday own and operate my own company, either a trucking company or an oil field supply company. I've always been interested in trucks, and where I'm from, there's a lot of oil and gas companies and businesses. Steve Jobs. The leader I ended up choosing from the article was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had a crazy success story. He's the founder and creator of Apple, which as of April was worth $586 billion. Steve Jobs dropped out of college because tuition was too much. A few years later, he co-founded Apple in his parents' garage in 1976 with his friend Steve Wozniak. Steve was actually let go from Apple in 1985 after the board of directors sided with the CEO at the time. Apple actually almost went bankrupt in 1997, and Steve Jobs came to the rescue in order to save the company and to prevent it from going bankrupt. If it wasn't for Steve Jobs, computers, cell phones, music devices, and tablets wouldn't be the way they are now. Steve Jobs is probably the most successful entrepreneur to date. Steve Jobs actually called being fired from Apple the most important thing in his life, and he actually said it made him the man he is today. In 2011, Steve Jobs ended up dying from cancer. Steve Jobs is a leader. I personally think of Steve Jobs as a leader. One could be because I'm very biased. I've only used Apple products since 2011, and I don't see myself ever switching. And then also the reason Steve Jobs was let go from Apple in 1985 is because the team members felt like he was pushing them too hard. And then the reason I see Steve Jobs as a great leader is just because he dropped out of school. He then started his business in his parents' basement, and then he later got fired from the company he helped create. He then saved the company from going bankrupt, and now that company is a billion-dollar company, and it's all thanks to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is known for wanting the best products and services. Oftentimes, he was kind of hard on his staff, but it was just because he always wanted them to be the best they could be. He cared about every little detail, and to many he was known as a perfectionist. One thing about Steve Jobs is that he was well aware of his weaknesses as a leader, but he focused on his strengths and used those strengths to become such a great leader that he is known for. He always praised his staff anytime he was talking about products they made or helped him make. I think a thing that many people always forget about Jobs is that he had the ability to push people to do things they didn't even think they were possibly able to do. I also think a great person to compare Steve Jobs to, in my opinion, would have to be Kobe Bryant. They both have an insane work ethic. They're both known for wanting nothing but the best and wanting to be the best. In an interview after the release of the iPad 1 back in 2000, when asked Steve Jobs about how rough he was on people, he replied, "Look at the results. They are all smart people I work with, and any of them can get a job at another place and could be managing that company. If they were truly feeling brutalized, they would leave, but they don't. They're still here working for me. And just that answer right there, just that statement right there shows that even though I'm sure Steve Jobs was pushing his staff to the limit, they still understood, like, yeah, he's pushed us, but look at what he's helping us accomplish. Look at what he's accomplishing, and look at what we're doing together as a team. And then linked to reality, what I took from this assignment is just to never give up. No matter how tough life, school, or even work gets, just never stop focusing on your goals. Yes, Steve Jobs dropped out of school, but what you never read in articles is that he dropped out of school because of how much classes were and how little money his parents and family had. But he still were attending classes free at the college after dropping out. He would stop in and just watch the classes and stuff like that, just as a spectator, but not as a student. Steve Jobs was probably the hardest working individual there was, and even when he was diagnosed with cancer in 2004, he still worked up until he wasn't able to in 2010. I also took from this assignment to always think outside the box and to never be satisfied with anything less than perfection. Steve Jobs was an amazing leader and person, and he will forever be remembered for the way he changed technology. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.